Amen. God bless you, Brian. Thank you so much. Brian, Brian, just met this young man, a couple weeks ago. I feel like he's become an actual friend. By the way, most people don't stay friends with us at HarborPointe very long, though. Let's see. Yeah. This is once you find out what's really going on here. This is. But God bless you, Brian. You really do have a wonderful gift and wonderful way. Actually, Brian came to our youth gathering on Friday night, and that turned out to be just super. And I just, I had the greatest time. I felt like I was a teenager again, because I ate this s'more. I mean, what's that? I'm not a teenager. You know what? I don't know who's got this light. It's a little on the bright side. I feel like I'm under an interrogation. Yeah, I swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But that one right there, that big one, is my. I'm stalled long enough. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, you're right. You're right. It's right. I'm just. Well, anyways, it was a great night Friday night. It's a great night, and I want to say, and then followed up. We had this men's breakfast, and it was really wonderful. It was a time, and we started. And Linwood got there before 8:30. I was so proud. And then he left, and then he came back, and he left, and he came back, and it was just exciting. It was it was in fact Jim Young's son showed up. He's a professional comedian. It was great to hear real jokes. It was really good. It was a phenomenal time. It was truly. It was all about you or me Anyways, we had a great. And then I went to this Sunday school teachers workshop at 2:00, and what was fantastic. I haven't done this. I have not made a craft where I make a little crown and put my name on it and put it on my head. I have not done that in probably at least 60 years, at least. And there, I did that. I was wearing a crown with my name on it. And I felt so special. It said, Tom, and you're supposed to have another word that described yourself, and I said, mature. Tom, mature. Yeah, mature. This is, It was a great time. I want to say something. I'm going to give a little plug here. There is something going on. There really is something going on in our midst right now. I just really sense God's Spirit is kind of doing some special things, and with our children is one of those areas. I just really feel Vicki. God is working inside of Vicki and some other. I just am praying, if God's speaking to you about children, there's a place. There's a place there too. Anyways, I'm just saying, super. And what's really amazing to me as we look at this series that we're into right now is that God is willing to do His work in people like you and me. And the word I'm going to use highlighting that is foolishness. We're talking about the foolishness of God, reimagining the foolishness of God. That God, that's something we don't often see, but 1 Corinthians 1:25 says the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom. The weakness of God is stronger than human strength, but it's still talking about the foolishness of God. And I think that foolishness revolves around the fact that God loves people who are messed up. And He has a hard time finding people that are not messed up, I think, is the deal. There was this saying many years ago, William Norman Ewer, I don't know if you're familiar with this saying. It's about, he wrote, turn of the century, early 1920s, I guess, actually. He was in Britain. He was actually, for a period, he was a spy for Russia. So there's kind of, what's that? Are we supposed to know this? I'm not hearing everything. What's that? Is that right? You guys, by the way, Brian, I tell you what, if you think this is somehow a normal church, this is not normal. I just want to say, this group is not normal. It never is. But how odd of God to choose the Jews. That was what he said. Some people said a little anti-Semitic, but there's some truth to the idea of what in the world, why did he pick people that are obstreperous and difficult and they were just kind of hard to. So much of the Old Testament is about you're not getting it. It's kind of like that somebody slapping you. You're not getting it. You're not getting it. Somebody added on, not out of God. His son was one. That's and yet there's a message to that as well, that his son came to us who were so messed up. I mean, that's the message. And I want to do a little Old Testament. We're kind of doing a little Old Testament hero series right now, talking about the heroes of the Old Testament, but how messed up they were, and yet God still seemed to work with them. One of those messed up people was a guy by the name of Abraham. And Abraham is the guy who really started this whole nation of Israel. And so he's the founder, the starting point, the guy everyone looks up to in the Old Testament, one of the big names. It says that Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, and the wife of the son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. And this is really important, because here they are in this city, and this city of Ur represents everything that may be not of God. It's kind of Ur. It's a place to leave. It's a place God's saying, I want to draw you out of. And he did. And it says that they set out to go to Canaan, the promised land. That's where God said, this is where I want you to go. I want you to go to the promised land. I've got you on track for the promised land. And so as they're traveling along, they're doing great until you come to that word but. But is an important word, wherever you see the word but. In fact, I just want you to know, if somebody comes along and tells you, you are really doing a great job. Wait till when that but comes in, that's what they really want to say. They really want to say, you're wonderful in every way. But, and that's what they really want to say. But, when they came to Haran, they settled there. They got halfway. They came halfway. And I want to say something. A lot of us are halfway. I mean, in fact, there's a lot of stuff inside of us that just makes us halfway. We're halfway there. It's kind of the way, and so much of Abraham is sort of that way. Now, it's kind of amazing that God, in this place of being halfway, God still speaks to us. And he spoke to Abraham. And he said, the Lord said to him, go from your country, your people, your father's household, to the land I will show you. So Abraham went, as the Lord had told him. And Abraham was 75 years old. My gosh, I'm young compared to Abram. And he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. By the way, moving is not easy, is it, Mike Twisdale? Melissa, I know. This is, it's not. Mike and Melissa just moved this past week, right? This is, you're still moving. Oh, I was hoping you were done because I volunteered. There was a part of me, before Mike moved, I said, Mike, just call on me. I'm willing to help you. And then he said, I'm moving this week. And I said, oh, gosh. Yeah, but. I said, but. Yeah, but. Yeah. Hey, it's kind of like when God spoke to Moses, it was, God spoke to and said, I want you. And Moses said, well, how about my brother? Well, just take my brother Aaron. He can be the one. So my brother Fred is really strong. This is, anyways, he's God's speaking to him, and he's moving. He's doing the thing, and he travels through the land, probably some 600-700 miles to Shechem. Shechem, by the way, comes from the word to rise early, or to get an early start. That's a good thing, isn't it? If you want to get right in your life, it's good to get up early and get going, right? That's a good way. You kind of connect with God. You get in God's rhythm. You kind of get out of God's rhythm by staying up late, sleeping in. I think that's basic. Anyways, that's what happened with, Abraham comes to Shechem, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, to your offspring I will give this land. And so he built an altar there, and he began worshiping, and God appeared to him, and good things are happening. And then you come to this next verse, and from there he went on toward the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Now I think there's something significant about where he pitched his tent. Because Bethel means the house of God. Ai means a heap of ruins. And he pitched his tent between the house of God and the heap of ruins. And you go later in the scriptures, and it talks about Jacob falling asleep at Bethel. And he puts his head on the rock, and he sees God ascending and descending. He sees angels ascending and descending. There's this pathway to God at Bethel. But at Ai is the place. How many remember what happened at Ai? Anybody, biblical scholars? Jim knows what's happened there. Oh, he forgot. Jim used to be a biblical scholar. There was a battle going on there, and the Israelites were getting defeated because this guy named Achan had hid this stuff in his tent, and he was greed and avarice and all kinds of stuff had messed things up, and then eventually the city got demolished. You know, this is basically it. Became a heap of ruins. And so you got this Abraham pitching his tent halfway between the house of God and a heap of ruins. And I was thinking, gosh, this is where we often pitch our tent, isn't it? Halfway between these two things. And it says that Abram, when things got tough, what did he do? He set out toward the Negev, and there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to a place of bondage, a place which is represented in Scripture as a place where greed and avarice and anything negative happens. It's Egypt. And he goes to live there. And he goes to live there because he's saying, gosh, I've got to survive. And he says, I'm going to Egypt because the famine's severe. The famine is so bad. Things are so rotten that I got to do something to survive. Have you ever been in that place where you say, I just got to survive, and I don't care about this business of right and wrong. I just got to survive. And that's where Abraham was. He didn't care at this point about right and wrong. Here's this guy, Bible hero, great man of God, but this is what he did. He went to Egypt and he said to his wife Sarah, I know what a beautiful woman you are, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. So guess what? I'm going to turn you over to Pharaoh's harem. What a nice guy this is. He's saying, I've got to survive. How can I survive? I'm willing to sell my own wife to survive. And it says, and Abram came to Egypt. Egypt saw that Sarah was very beautiful. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And she was taken to his palace, and he treated Abram well for her sake. And Abram acquired sheep and cattle and male and female donkeys, male and female servants and camels. He got rich off of his wife being sold into Pharaoh's harem. What a story. What an awful story, isn't it? And the rest of the story goes on to say, but. That word but comes back in there. But God in his mercy reached down and said, I want to do something that's going to turn things around. And he got hold of Pharaoh's mind. He's inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. And it goes on to say, Pharaoh summoned Abram. What have you done to me? He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Take her and go. Get out of my sight. I don't want you any longer around me. And then it says that Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. And what everything he had was now, he was a pretty wealthy guy. He had sort of made it. He kind of made it in sort of an underhanded way. It's kind of like, God, what are you up to? Why didn't you just wipe him out? What is this? How did he get rewarded for doing the wrong thing? I mean, what's going on here, God? So Abraham went to Egypt, to Negev, and with his wife and everything he had, and Lot and went with him. And Abraham had become very wealthy in livestock and silver and gold and a lot of good stuff. And so where does he go? Where does he go next? Where does he pitch his tent next? It says from Negev he went from place to place until he came to Bethel once again, to the place between Bethel and Ai, right in that place between the house of God and the heap of ruins, and where his tent had been earlier, where he first built an altar. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. He's worshiping God right in that place where you could go either way. He was right in that delicate place of where he could hear God, but he could also hear what the world is saying at the same time. And then it says that while he's there, God spoke to him. And I don't know why God would speak to a guy like Abram, but he did. And he said, Abram, I tell you what, I want to give you this land. I want to make a nation that's great. I want to bless all the people of the world through you. I have great plans for you. And Abram, if he, I wonder if Abram said, me? I'm kind of a messed up. Look at me. I got a checkered background and checkered career. And Abram, it said, though, believed the Lord. And God credited to him as righteousness. And by the way, I don't think it's just kind of, I believe. I think the idea here is that he said, God, you are somebody I can trust. I can't trust really myself, but I trust you. I trust you. I'm not a good believer, but I do trust you more than I trust me. I trust you. And God said, that's the place that I want you to be in. I want your trust. I want you to trust me. In fact, you go to the New Testament, and Paul picks up on this. In fact, several places in the New Testament, the scriptures pick up on this phrase because it's crucial to our understanding of how we're to enter into a relationship with Jesus. It's a trusting relationship. The biggest issue for us is that we trust, that we enter into a trusting relationship, that our heart becomes open to God, and that God can begin to do work. Because guess what? If we try to do everything just right, we're gonna flunk pretty badly. How many of us realize that we're gonna flunk badly when we attempt to take things into our own hands? But it says, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? You're so foolish. After beginning by means of the Spirit, you're now trying to finish by means of the flesh. You're trying to become spiritual on your own merits. You're trying to do it all the right way. You're trying to do things to please God. You can't do it. So again, I ask you, does God give you His Spirit and work miracles among you by the works of the law, by doing everything right? Or by believing what you've heard, by trusting in what God is up to? So also, Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. It's this trust, this relationship of trust that I'm looking for. And you're coming back to Abraham. Well, we wish that he would fully have learned his lesson now that God has really spoken to him. But you know what? There's this thing. I think the house of God is a place of trust. You know what the heap of ruins is when we try to grab hold of things for ourselves. It's kind of like an open hand and a closed hand. When we grab hold, even if we grab hold of things spiritually, even if we grab hold of good things, we grab hold. How many of you want to grab hold of your family, and you say, I want my children to turn out this way, guess what happens? You squeeze the life out of them, don't you? I don't know if you've seen the movie play of Mice and Men. Should I tell the, have you seen the Mice and Men? Is there anybody seen the, gosh, I better not tell it. It's really, if I tell you the ending, it will destroy it for you. So I won't tell it. You'll have to watch the movie, and then you can understand my illustration. But it's really the. You want me to tell it a little bit? No. I'll tell you privately. Okay. But the idea when we hang on, we grip and hang on, we have a way of destroying the very thing that we desire so badly. And what God is always asking us to do is open up our hands. This is why worship, you don't worship like this. You worship like this. And so what's going on with Abraham? Well, Sarai gets this bright idea. Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and this is part of the promise. God promised children. But she said, an Egyptian slave named Hagar, and said, why don't you have children with her? Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. By the way, sometimes wives have some really stupid ideas, don't they? I mean, no. This really, I mean, don't go there. I didn't say that. But at least this wife had a really stupid idea, wasn't it? And guess what? Sometimes husbands do really stupid things in going along with that stupid idea. And Abraham agreed to what Sarah said. So after Abraham had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai had his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar, gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. And then what goes on? The story just gets terrible. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abram, you are responsible for the wrong I'm suffering. Isn't that, I shouldn't say. That's, we won't even go there. We will not go there. Oh boy, I could get into trouble here. I could get into trouble with this story, this true story in the Bible. This is, but that's right. Then Sarah said to Abram, you are responsible for the wrong I'm suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now she's pregnant. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. And what does Abram do? Then your slave is in your hands. Do whatever you think is best. Then Sarai mistreated Hagar. She probably beat her. She abused her. And he said, that's okay. You know, this guy, he's a Bible hero on the one hand, and he's also messed up on the other. I think he's living in this world between the house of God and the heap of ruins. And it's a place, unfortunately, where we find ourselves as well, isn't it? You know what? The scriptures say that Abraham believed God's credited him as righteous, and he was called God's friend. What's wrong with God? What's wrong with God that he works with really messed up people? Anybody really messed up here? You know, Larry raised his hand. I'll agree. Larry, you know, you are really messed up, Larry. Remind me never to pass the mic to Larry. That just is, here's the ironic story. That here's the irony. That in the beginning, the Word was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made. And without him nothing was made that has been made. The house of God. Jesus came from the house of God. And then it says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling. Actually, literally, that means, that word is, he set up his tent. He pitched his tent. He tabernacled. He set his tent among us. Right where we are. He chose to say, right here, I'm doing it. Not when we're in the holiest of holy places. It's when we're in this place right on the edge of the heap of ruins. He said, I'm going to put my tent right there because I know that's where my people are. And I just want you to know, I am foolish enough to love you beyond your wildest dreams. I love you just the way you are. And the more messed up you are, you know, Larry, I have a feeling God says to you, I love you beyond your conception. And he says that to me because I'm messed up. The problem with me is that I can present pretty well. But then Ann will say to me, you know, you are really messed up. There's these little areas that can flip my switch. Or, you know, boom. Where in the world did that come from? I thought you, I can be really nice to all of you, but you don't know what's deep down. See, there's a heap of ruins inside my soul as well as the house of God. My tent is pitched there, somewhere in between. And that's where Jesus wants to be as well. He wants to be there as well. That's where Jesus wants to be. Lord, I pray that we might realize that it was really odd that you chose messed up people. But somehow that's the way it works in your economy. You really delight in people that don't have it all together. It's just the way you want to work it. And I just give thanks for that. And I just pray that as we trust you, that somehow you're going to see that trust way beyond our thoughts and actions. But somehow this thing called trust is going to be guiding and directing us and pulling us closer to the house of God. And we give thanks. Give thanks for your presence in our midst right now. In Jesus' name.